On a recent podcast, I made the statement that Smith machines are overrated, and a lot of you guys disagreed. So I figured on this episode of the GymCrafter podcast, we should fight about it. Welcome back to the GymCrafter podcast, everybody. My name is Tim. I am the head gym nerd here at GymCrafter.com, the website that I built to help ordinary folks like you and I build home and garage gyms that we absolutely love. And I have got a fun episode for you guys today. It really demonstrates how awesome the comment section on the GymCrafter YouTube channel is, and I know that you rarely hear that. Normally the comment section on any YouTube channel is kind of a dumpster fire, but you guys are pretty awesome, and I really appreciate people didn't just say, hey, you're wrong and you're an idiot. There were a couple people that said, hey, you're wrong and you're an idiot, and the idiot part might be true. That remains to be seen, but a lot of you gave reasons as to why you thought I was wrong. So I figured I'd devote an episode to the Smith machine because if you've been paying attention, there are Smith machines everywhere, right? Bells of Steel just released their Bring Your Own Bar Smith machine with multiple angles that attaches to a rack. I know Rep's got one in the works. Fringe Sport has one in the works. It seems like everybody is releasing either a Smith machine add-on or some way to simulate a Smith machine or all-in-one trainers. They're everywhere, right? And the more you see them, the more they get marketed, and the more they get marketed, the more people say that they want them. And the purpose of this episode isn't necessarily to say you should or shouldn't buy one. The purpose of this episode is I really want to talk through this subject and give you guys kind of the pros and cons. I want to tell you why I still think Smith machines are overrated, and I also want to address some of the concerns that you guys brought up and hopefully help you make a decision of whether or not you want to spend the rather significant amount of money it takes to add a Smith machine to your gym. So that's where we're going today, and should be fun. So let's start with, like we always do, with an update. And today we're going to do a training update. As you guys know, I'm training for weight loss so that I can get down to a certain body fat percentage so that in January-ish I can make a run at some muscle gain. And I've been using the Carbon Diet Coach app. I've given you guys a lot of feedback on that over past episodes, and generally I like it. However, I am going to switch. I'm going to switch to an app called MacroFactor, and I'm going to do that for a few reasons. Nothing wrong with Carbon. There are a couple of things I wish were different. I wish that it tracked fiber, and I don't think MacroFactor does either. I wish these apps tracked fiber. Personal opinion, I think calories, protein, and fiber are the three things we should be tracking. There's just been a lot of nothing made of carbs versus fats and the ratio and which one is better, and everybody's got their own religion about it, and honestly, it doesn't make a difference. So you get your protein right, you get your calories right, and you get enough fiber every day, you're like 98% of the way there. So I wish that it did that. But the real reason that I changed was I noticed that I'd plateaued, my weight loss had plateaued, and I wasn't losing weight. I was sticking to the calories, and what I realized was that my activity had dropped a little bit because cold, and also just because of the time of the year, so I haven't been outside walking as much, and also that the holidays are coming, so my calories are going to be spiking on certain days because I'm not going to not enjoy turkey on Turkey Day and all that kind of fun stuff. So the problem with Carbon for me is while it adjusts intelligently to your targets if you are what's called compliant. So at the end of every week you check in, it says, hey, were you compliant? Which, first of all, kind of dumb. Like I've entered my weight, I've entered my weight every day, I enter my food, I log it all. You know if I was compliant or not, right? Like it's kind of a dumb question to ask me, so never really got that about them. But the other thing is if you say yes, then it recalculates, right? If you say yes and you haven't lost any weight, it lowers your calories a little bit. If you say yes and you've gained weight, it raises anyway, so it adjusts. The problem is that when you're not compliant, it doesn't do anything. It just says, let's try again. And I really thought, well, if you've got my weight data and you've got what I've been eating, you should still be able to make some adjustments even though I wasn't compliant. So I did some research, and MacroFactor looks like it does that. Initial impressions of MacroFactor, there is a lot to it. One of the things I really liked about Carbon was the simplicity of it. I love the weekly blocks. It's the easiest food logging I've ever done. No issues putting in recipes, no issues putting in, like it has your repeated foods, recent foods. It works really well. I know part of this is going to be the learning curve on the new one, but there's a lot more to MacroFactor, and I don't necessarily like that. I just want something kind of clean and simple, and it feels like a lot of the features in this new one are added just to make it look like a lot. So we'll see in a couple of weeks, but that's what I'm going with that. I still recommend Carbon if you like, if you think you can stick to your targets. I think it does a good job, but we're going to give MacroFactor a try. And that's one of the reasons I do this channel, right? Is I want to give you guys some honest feedback on different things and kind of give you guys the information you need to make a good choice in the deal. So that's kind of the deal with what's going on with the diet right now. And that means we are into Smith machines. So like I said, I made the statement that Smith machines are overrated. And I realized this when I was out at Force USA headquarters in Utah, where they sell all-in-one trainers, all of which had Smith machines. So a couple of things. First of all, I don't like that the Smith machine is always in the way. If it's down low, if it's up high, it seems like it's always in the way on those all-in-ones. Now, part of it's because I am a tall, gangly fellow, and I hit my head a bunch of times, and so maybe there's a little bit of that to it, that it's just, why is this thing here? I don't need it. I know how to use a barbell. So that was definitely part of it. But the other part of it is I want to kind of define my definition of overrated so that you guys understand what I'm talking. Because I think a lot of people, when they hear the term overrated, they mean it's worthless, you shouldn't buy one. And that's not at all what I mean. What I mean is that there are other tools that can do the same thing or do it better for less money. And I think that's true of a lot of the functions of Smith machines. I kept looking at these Smith machines and I kept going, I can do that with a barbell. I can do that with the cables. I can do that with a dumbbell. Like, I don't understand what the big deal is. And part of it is because at 53, having been doing this for a very long time, the fitness industry up until about 5 minutes ago just crapped all over Smith machines. They were a joke. They were never recommended. No trainer recommended them. Like, nobody ever recommended Smith machines for the most part. There were a few bodybuilders out there, and we're going to talk about that, who used them for certain applications. But for the most part, they really weren't a thing that was recommended. And in fact, if anybody asked for advice, most people would tell them, just stay away from the Smith machine. So it's really weird for me to all of a sudden, like I said 5 minutes ago, Smith machines are the best thing ever. You want one in your gym, you want to add it to your rack, you want to buy. Like, to me, it's just a little too much hyped up about it. So that's kind of my definition of overrated. That's kind of where I'm coming from this. But I do want to talk about, the way I want to break this episode down is I want to talk about the positives of a Smith machine and also the drawbacks of a Smith machine, and then kind of discuss each one a little bit so you can see from a trainer's perspective, somebody who trains people on a regular basis. I've seen a lot of people rehabbing from injuries. I've seen a lot of people with different training goals. I've used them myself. I've had 2 in the gym. So just kind of my perspective on both the pros and the cons, and hopefully at the end of this episode, you guys will be able to decide if it's something that you're going to want in your gym or not. The way that I look at a Smith machine is the way that I look at any other piece of gear for your gym. It is a tool. And if you have a particular job that requires this particular tool, then it's probably a good thing to add to your gym. The problem is I think that a lot of people have a lot of nails in their garage, and instead of using a hammer because a hammer is boring and they already own a hammer and it's old, and they'd rather use a crescent wrench to hammer that nail in because it's new and it's shiny, and people say you can do it with a crescent wrench, right? So I don't know that it's the right tool for everything. But again, we're going to talk about all of that. But like I said, let's decide if it's a good tool for you or not. And I think it's beneficial to start with the cons, right? The things that always kept people away from Smith machines in the past. And the first one is, it is a fixed bar path, and it's a straight bar path. When you lift with a barbell, most of your barbell lifts, most of your dumbbell lifts, the bar, if it's moving in a natural plane of motion with your body, it's not a straight path. The squat done properly, and I know some of you guys who kind of like to dip forward at the bottom of your squat will disagree with me, but if you watch somebody with pristine squat form where they keep their chest up the whole time and really drive up from the bottom, that bar, if you look at it from the side, travels on a perpendicular straight up and down line. It's really pretty to watch when people do it right. So that's one lift, and that's actually one place where I found some benefit in the Smith machines in my gym, is teaching people what a straight bar path on a squat felt like. So that's kind of a positive and a negative. The positive is for a squat, that's beneficial. The negative is for almost every other exercise, it is not a positive. Your bench press does not go in a straight line. Your overhead press does not go in a straight line. Your curls do not go in a straight line. Your rows do not go in a straight line. Your RDLs do not go in a straight line. Like, none of the other stuff that you would do goes in a straight line. Now, some people use the Smith machine for like a bottoms up leg press, and that kind of doesn't matter. That bar path doesn't matter. So there's a few things, like I said, but on the whole, most of the stuff that you would do with a barbell, your bar's not traveling in a straight line. So why does that matter? Over time, what happens is, if you're not allowing your body to move in its natural plane of motion, you're going to cause repetitive use injury over time. I'm going to use an example that I've heard. It's not my example, but if you have a sliding door at your house and that door slides back and forth on a track, right? And that's its natural plane of motion. It wants to slide in that track. But if you have it cockeyed in there just a little bit and it rubs just a little bit over time, that thing is going to fall out of the track and break. And the same thing happens with your shoulders, the same thing happens with your knees, the same thing happens with your wrists, the same thing happens with your elbows. And have I missed any joints? Your hips? Anyway, so what happens is when you're forcing your body, because the bar is in a fixed path, to move in a manner that is not natural, you cause imbalances and oftentimes can cause injury over time. So because Smith machines have kind of made this resurgence, you haven't seen a lot of people experiencing this yet, but this is one of the reasons that Smith machines have been around for a very long time. And one of the big reasons they fell out of favor is this specific point, is that over time, they cause problems. Now, if you use them to supplement barbell and dumbbell work, it's not as big of a deal, because if you're still, you're using them as an extra thing. That's what a lot of you guys pointed out in your comments was, I use them for additional work. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that down the road here. But that's something to keep in mind, that if you have a Smith machine, it's probably not a great idea to only use the Smith machine. So I would mix it up with other things. But that's the first drawback, is that fixed bar path. The second one is kind of in relation to that, which is when the bar is held on that fixed bar path for you, the Smith machine tends not to promote good form, and people get really sloppy. And when I was training people here in the gym and using the Smith machine, what I would notice is they were no longer bracing, because if you're going to squat with a bar on your back, you have to brace your entire body. If you're going to deadlift, you have to brace. You really should be bracing on every single move, and like a full body, full tension brace, so that your back is in a good neutral position, that your shoulders are back and retracted, that there's a few, your head's back. There's a few things that you want in position. And when people were using the Smith machine, it's very easy to get lazy and stop bracing. And when you stop bracing, you get hurt. And it's just the way that it works. That's why you brace in the first place. Now, the Smith machine takes away a lot of the need to brace. So it's kind of this, is it good or is it bad? But in my opinion, that's bad, because then what happens is if you are mixing up your training like I just recommended, and you're going from here where you're like, I can be a little sloppy, I don't need to brace, I don't need to use perfect form. And then you get out on a rack with a barbell and you don't brace and use perfect form, that's where problems can happen. So I think it builds bad habits in addition to the problem with the bracing. The next one is that it overloads your primary movers and it allows you not to use your supporting stabilizing muscles. Now, I'm going to talk about this from the other perspective in a minute, because this is something that you guys actually liked about it. You liked the fact that you didn't, if your stabilizing muscles were tired, that you could still work out and strain your bigger muscle groups. So the drawback to that is this. It's kind of like taking, I've got a Toyota 4x4 truck. It's got a 4Runner. And so when a lot of people upgrade those, and when you go to upgrade them, you want to put a rooftop tent on top of it. You want to put, the first thing most people do is they put suspension. That's because that stabilizes the car. If you go in and the first thing you do is you put a supercharger in there, and then you put a big old heavy rooftop tent on, and then you put these big tires and you put a lift, like all of a sudden these shocks can't handle what's going on. It's not a perfect analogy, but I think you guys get the idea. Whereas if you're training and you're training the prime movers only, and you're not allowing your stabilizing muscles to keep up in development, then what happens is your big movers overload your smaller muscles. And again, you can, not definite, but you can cause injury, and you definitely can cause muscle imbalances. Now, there's times when you want to do that. And like I said, well, when we get to the pros, we'll talk about that. So all of you bodybuilders out there, don't freak out on me yet. But for the most part, for most people, training those big muscles and not letting those stabilizing muscles and those antagonist muscles catch up along with and develop at the same rate. Look, if the thing that restricts you from doing a squat is your stability, then your stability needs to get stronger so that your whole body can support the weight of the squat. You don't want to take out your stabilizing muscles just because you want to squat more weight. And that leads to something that's just a personal pet peeve, which is 90% of the time, the things that I see people doing in a squat machine can be done better elsewhere. You can do it better with a barbell. You can do it better with a different machine. You can do better with cables. You can do better with dumbbells. There's very few things. There's a few, but there's very few things that a Smith machine does that you can't do with stuff you probably already have in your gym. So I see a lot of people, they buy these Smith machines because they want to squat it, and I'm like, you have a rack and a barbell. Like, why do you need the Smith machine? You already can squat, right? I want to do bent over rows. You already can do that. There's not like, so that's, I don't need to beat that example into the ground, but I think it gives you the idea that if you really think about it, most of the things that people want to do, overhead presses, those things can be done with other implements, and oftentimes can be done better, again, because the bar path moves in a natural manner, and there's just other reasons that you're just better. Your stabilizer muscles get to work. It's oftentimes you can do them better with other things. Another little pet peeve of mine that I'll just touch on and go, and they're addressing this, so it's not going to be an issue forever, but almost every barbell that I've ever used in a Smith machine is garbage. It's the wrong diameter. It has terrible knurl. It's just awful. So as a barbell guy, as you can see behind me, it really pains me to get into a Smith machine that's got a terrible bar. Now, Bells of Steel with their, and I'll put links to everything I talk about today in the description below. Those are affiliate links. If you like this podcast and you decide to buy a Smith machine or one of the other things I talk about today, please use those links. It helps me out. It doesn't cost you a penny extra. That's how I make a living, and that's how I can keep bringing you videos every week, because if you don't use the links, I can't come back and do this. And while some of you would probably like that, I think most of you keep tuning in because you like seeing them, and if you want me to make more episodes, I got to have some income from that. So thank you for that ahead of time. Thank you for those of you guys who reach out and ask for links, and thank you for those of you who use those links, because that really, really helps out. So last time I'll mention that, but I will put links to this stuff down below. And as I was saying, Bells of Steel just came out with what they call a BYOB, rack attached Smith machine. There's some really good things about this particular Smith machine. It works on different angles. And the thing that I love most is you can use your own barbell, which means two things. Number one, you can use an actually good bar. And number two, you can get the stupid bar out of the way, which is really one of my biggest pet peeves. Like, I hate the bar standing there. So the fact that you can take the bar out and it doesn't impact the rest of your rack. I haven't played with it, so I don't know how much it impacts, where you lift inside your rack and how much room it takes up. But for the most part, you get that bar out of the way. That's most of the problem. So most Smith machines have a crappy barbell. I don't want to use it. That's the end of that point. And this last one is something that I didn't realize until I had the Smith machines here and I was using them myself, and then I had people who were training here using them, is if you're going to be using them to bench press, I would really recommend against it for another reasons besides what I just mentioned. So the big thing for me is when you use a Smith machine, you have to grab it and then you have to unrack it. So you have to turn the bar. And what happens is when you're bench pressing, if you set up for the bench press correctly, especially if it's a heavy bench press, and let's be honest, people like Smith machines because it allows you to lift a heavier amount of weight than you can with a standard barbell, and your ego loves it. So you put a ton of weight on there, you unrack it, and then what happens is you start with your wrists in the right position, but then when you turn that bar to unrack it, your wrists are in a really, really bad position. And that means you do end up doing one of two things. Most of my clients just continue to press with their wrists in a bad position and wonder why their wrists were hurting. Bad idea, right? The other thing is now you've got a heavy barbell, and now you have to adjust your grip on that bar so that it is in the right position, so that the weight of the bar is in line with your forearm and in the right spot, so that your arms are actually supporting it and not your wrists. And trying to do that at the top of a lift with the heavy bars, not all that much fun and not a great idea. And then when you get back and you have to rehook it, now you've got to put your wrists in another bad position. So anyway, as you're pressing, both overhead and bench pressing with a Smith machine, you got to be really careful with your wrists. Now, can you be careful and do it and not hurt yourself? Absolutely. The problem is, like I mentioned with the poor form point, it encourages the opportunity for injury. And as you guys can see, there's a through line through most of this stuff, which is there's a lot of opportunity in a Smith machine for injury for various biomechanical reasons. So fancy trainer term for it puts you in bad positions that could possibly result in injury. I know a lot of you guys are going to comment and go, oh, you're crazy. The Smith machine's safer. And that's going to be my first positive point we talk about, that a lot of people think Smith machines are safer. But I think it's really important to realize that that fixed bar path and that moving bar aren't always the best for you. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking at getting a Smith machine, just be really careful with those things. And those are big reasons why trainers don't like them on the whole. Again, I'm sure I'm going to have some trainers out there comment, I'm a trainer and I love this. Awesome. I'm glad it's a tool you like to use. Hopefully you're using it for things that tool is appropriate for. But outside of that, most trainers I know don't like them for a lot of those reasons. But with all that said, right, I don't want to just dump all over the Smith machines, because I actually made a list of positives that's longer than the negatives, believe it or not, because I wanted to present, like I said, both sides of the Smith machine debate so that you guys can make a smart decision on whether or not they're right for you. So let's take a look at the positives. First of all, they are extremely fast and convenient to use. One of my favorite things about having a Smith machine in here, especially since I had two on opposite sides of the gym and I trained multiple clients at once, man, slapping weights on and off between clients, slapping weights on and off for drop sets, slapping weights on and off for pyramids, awesome, right? Didn't use collars, didn't need to use collars, just put them on, pull them off, you're done, and don't have to worry about setting up the safety straps. You just move the little safety pins up and down, and a lot of people, to be honest, we don't even use the safeties because you can turn your wrists and just hook it on. So unless we were going real heavy, we didn't even really bother with the safeties. Super, super fast, super convenient. If you've got an all-in-one trainer in your garage and you've got a barbell that you can use on the front and you've got a Smith machine, I'm gonna guess that most people default to using a Smith machine because it's quicker. And that is definitely a benefit. For those of you out there who are looking to get in and out of your gym quickly, it definitely saves time. It also encourages you to work out more because you don't have to pull the barbell off the wall and set the J hooks up and set the like you just go up to the Smith machine, it's already there, you put your weights on, you go. And a lot of people leave the weights on that they normally use, so it's just, like I said, it's faster. So that's a huge benefit of the Smith machine. And also, it's built into these all-in-one units. A lot of people, now the folks who are out there watching and who watch this podcast and watch this channel, who build gyms like I do, power rack, barbells, weights, y'all don't understand all-in-one trainers for the most part. Most people, I get a lot of people going, why would you ever want one of those? Why would you want one of those? They're terrible. Just get a rack, just get a barbell. And I'm kind of with you on that. However, a lot more people like the all-in-one trainers than don't. It's something that I've really learned over the last year. And in going to Force USA and using the RitFit and the Major Fitness and talking to so many of you guys about these things, there's a very large percentage of people with home gyms where a home gym is an all-in-one trainer. So that's another benefit, is that it's just built in, right? Your cables are there, your Smith machine's there, it's all in one system. You can just buy a gym, stick it in the corner, stick it up against the wall between the laundry machines, and away you go. So that's another thing. It's convenient, it's fast, it comes with, it's built in. So those are some legit benefits that benefit people in the real world. And the more you can do to work out consistently and the more you can do to make working out easier, I am all for those things. So those are definitely some positives. Another one, which I get this. People feel safer inside of a Smith machine. I've talked to a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of guys specifically, that tell me that their wives will not touch a barbell, but they will use the Smith machine all day long. So, and not just wives, but kids, even guys, right? There's a lot of guys who just don't want to learn to use a barbell. The Smith machine's easier. The learning curve is easier on Smith machine because, hey, the bar goes up and down, right? Just get under it, move it. So whereas with the barbell, you've got to learn to brace, you've got to learn proper form, you've got to learn foot placement, you've got to learn hand, there's a little bit to it, right? It's a skill. Smith machine is not a skill. Smith machine is, that leads to a lot of those negatives, right? That I talked about. No form, no bracing, possible injuries, but it's also a positive, right? Because again, you can buy it, it's built in, it's quick, it's fast, you put it in the corner, you can use it on the first day. So I get that, and a lot of people who, like I said, wouldn't use a barbell. I bring a lot of people into this gym and they're like, whoa, that is a little much, Tim. I don't think I could use this gym. You got anything easier to use like I see in the hotels? And that's what you see in the hotels, right? You see functional trainers, you maybe see some dumbbells, you see some Smith machines, and it really is. It's just, it's more welcoming to people. Another thing that people like is you can, like I mentioned, you can lift more weight. People's egos really, really like it. Now, there are some of you out there with the training need to overload your muscles more than your stabilizing muscles can handle. Specifically, bodybuilders typically, I find, have the most need for this, in that they want to get bodybuilding training. If you've never done it, it's a lot of volume. It's a lot of sets of 15, it's a lot of sets of 20, it's a lot of sets of 30 and more, and it's just volume. And what happens is that while your prime moving muscles haven't quite reach their capacity for volume, the rest of your body is just like, I'm done, dude. I can't do anymore. I can't pick this up. And a Smith machine allows a bodybuilder to overload specific muscles and get that specific muscle group more volume than they could if they were just doing barbell and dumbbell work. And this goes back to what I was talking about before. This is a very specific tool for a very specific need that this is one of the things that you really can't do else. That's why bodybuilders like to use machines, right? And if you're at home and you don't have a whole garage full of machines, the Smith machine is one machine that can really do a lot of different things and help you isolate a lot of different muscles when you don't have those other machines available. Now, if you have those other machines available, the Smith machine is not needed. But in this particular case where we're talking about building garage gyms, it definitely could come in handy, right? And I would say I'd say at least half of the people that push back on my Smith machines are overrated comment were bodybuilders doing bodybuilder training. So I totally get that. Again, that is a crescent wrench problem, right? That needs a crescent wrench and not a hammer. So you want to actually use the right tool. There's one thing I would tell other people who aren't bodybuilders or maybe people who are just starting. One of the biggest keys to success in bodybuilding training is not just isolating the muscle by overloading it, but understanding how to, in your mind-muscle connection, to isolate your connection to that specific muscle. Bodybuilders spend a lot of time posing because they want to be able to activate each individual muscle on their body. And when they do that, that also means that they can actually tense and flex individual muscles. So if they need to work a particular part of their shoulder, they know how to move the weight to isolate that particular part of their shoulder. If you're not an experienced bodybuilder and you're like, oh, I heard I can overload my shoulders when the rest of me is tired, and you don't have the skill of knowing how to isolate the muscle you're working on, that could cause problems. So if you're getting into bodybuilding training, it's awesome, it's fun. It's not my deal, it's not my jam. I'm not a fan of that many reps. I don't know how you guys do it. I've done it just because I train it, and I think you should always, at least know how to do what you teach people how to do, but it's just not my jam. I'm much more of a powerlifting, general fitness and preparedness guy, which is probably another reason why I'm not a big Smith machine fan, is for those two types of lifting, powerlifting and general fitness and preparedness. Not a lot of call for a Smith machine, right? So if you are a bodybuilder and you're training that way, a Smith machine might be a good tool for you. Only you can answer, your coach can answer that question, but that is a good benefit. And speaking of the bodybuilders, y'all do some crazy exercises. They just, powerlifters, I really like following the powerlifting programs much more because it's like 5 lifts, right? There's some accessory stuff, gotta hit your arms, do a little bit of core, I'm in and out and I'm done. Bodybuilders are like 17 different kinds of curls, 52 different squat variations. Like, it's crazy how many exercises you do. And that's actually one of the benefits of the Smith machine, is even though it's a simple bar and a simple path, y'all have figured out how to get under that bar and put all kinds of implements and contraptions. And some people sent me some videos on Instagram of them doing some stuff that I'm like, all right, you really can't do that exercise another way. You would have to have a Smith machine to do it. So it does open up some possibilities, again, mostly for bodybuilders, but for people who want to get creative in the gym. You've been training for a long time, you want to try some different stuff. It does open up the opportunity to do some unique stuff. So that is another benefit of a Smith machine. Now, the last one that somebody sent me, and this was I heard this from not only just normal folks, but I heard this from people who had used them for this, and also a couple of physical therapists, which is for older populations, where they've really suffered from a lot of muscle atrophy or sarcopenia, where you've lost muscle over time. Those stabilizer muscles are almost non-existent. So using a Smith machine allows people to move weight and to develop strengthened muscles that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Now, I'm not a physical therapist. I've got my opinions on this, and this is not a medical advice podcast. Me personally, I have trained older populations quite a bit. My approach is different. My approach is to, if you're missing those stabilizing muscles, we're gonna work on those first. Because for me, balance and stability is one of the keys to training an older person to not fall. And falling is one of the #1 causes of death. There's an old adage that you fall, break a hip, and then die of something else in the hospital, because you're stuck in the hospital. You get a staph infection, you get pneumonia, and stabilization and balance to me are critical in the older populations. Even for people who are rehabbing, again, I'm not a physical therapist. Like I said, this is when I train older folks, and those older folks typically aren't rehabbing from stuff. So I don't want to step out of my lane and talk about rehab. There may be a place for that. If you're a physical therapist and you rehab people, let me know in the comments. Do you use a Smith machine? Do you not recommend a Smith machine? But again, my recommendation is, if an older person can't put a barbell on their back, I don't want to put them under a Smith machine either. Let's get them to the point where they can actually hold the barbell on their back by developing the rest of their structural integrity first. I don't want to get too nerdy trainer on you, but it's just a personal philosophy. But I do want to address that because several people pointed out that they did like them for physical therapy. They did like them for training older populations. And I definitely want to kind of include that so that you guys know that if you have that particular job and you want to use a Smith machine as a tool, it is a possible tool to use for those things. So all of that said, I'm not going to buy a Smith machine for my house. Now, if Bells, hey Bells, if you want to send me your BYOB Smith machine to test, I will happily take it. Force USA, you want to send me the new C10 with the Smith machine on it? I will absolutely take it. You guys want to send me one of those things for free? I'll take it. And I'll use it, right? When I had them, I used them. So I didn't use it for everything, but I did use them here and there. So I'm not 100% against them. I just, for me, for my gym, for my clients, I'm not spending my money on it. But how about you guys? How many of you guys are planning on buying a Smith machine? Which Smith machine are you looking at? Are you looking at all-in-ones? Are you looking at a rack attached? Are you looking at like the Bulletproof Fitness VTS where it's like these two modules that attach and you put your own barbell in there? There's a lot of cool options coming out. What do you guys think? Whose Smith machine are you most looking forward to? I'm going to guess that Rep and Rogue, the two big dogs in the house, are probably going to come out with their own. So let me know what you guys think. Are you going to buy one? Are you not going to buy one? Do you already have one and you love it? Like I said, man, you guys are awesome down in the comment section. It's one of my favorite things to do is to chat with you guys down there and then to see all the discussions going on in there, seeing people talking to each other, having civil conversations. It's so refreshing to see people actually having intelligent, this is why I think you should do this is why I think you're wrong, and this is why I think I do this. And you see people go back and forth, and every once in a while you get some crazy comments. But other than that, you guys are great. So keep it up down there below in the comments. Like I said, if you decide to buy one of the things I referenced in this podcast, please use the links below. That helps me out. And until the next podcast, I'm Tim with GymCrafter.